Video podcasting has grown in popularity. The ability to sit in front of a camera, plug in a microphone, and have somewhat of decent lighting and hitting the record button has become the fastest way to not only communicate with your current audience, but reach a worldwide audience as well. I was so glad to receive a call from a local pastor that was interested in starting his podcast. Not just because it was the technical support that I can provide with the cameras and the lights and the microphone, but also getting a chance to talk to him from that leadership position of the value of why he's investing in a podcast. Because as we can see, not a lot of ministries are going above and beyond just their normal live stream services. So this video can definitely help encourage your ministry to expand outside of the four walls by really tapping into the power of digital and social media. In the description section, I'll leave time markers if you want to jump ahead to the technical setup, but I do first want to lay down the foundation and put some context around this so that it makes more sense. A couple weeks prior to the actual setup I'm going to show you, I got a message from a local pastor, Pastor Lee Mooring, and he was actually assisting another pastor in his digital presence. And so, getting that initial call of setting up a podcast, we were talking about equipment. What equipment would work good for this? So, we talked about cameras, we talked about lights, we talked about microphones. And then, when I had the actual meeting with the pastor that was actually going to do the podcast, Pastor Dario Armstrong, we did it on a Zoom call. And as we were having the conversation, it was about the podcast, but it was also about monetizing the podcast. Because I feel if you're going to leverage the power of these digital platforms, you might as well get paid to do it anyway. And especially if you're a ministry, this is just additional revenue that comes right back in the ministry. Stay tuned for a separate video as I talk about 5 different ways that churches can monetize their digital platforms. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that video. But that was one of the things that I think he was excited about as well, because if you don't know, you just don't know. And so getting that information can definitely help you make better decisions, especially about how you plan on using digital platforms. And as a subscriber to this channel, you know that I love the power of sponsorships. Being able to use products and services that we are going to use anyway, and being able to either get those products for free or have companies pay us to use their products too. So at the end of that initial conversation, my idea to them was to record a pilot episode. I would just bring my equipment, everything that was needed, show them the process of using the equipment and the quality that they would get from the equipment that I was using as well. And this would just give them the good visual that they could actually see and feel and even be able to touch the equipment so that they can make the right purchasing decisions for how they wanted to move forward. Now, I'll spoil the whole rest of the video by saying they absolutely love the results that we were able to achieve in just a quick 4-hour time frame. And that includes setup and breakdown as well. And I was even able to record a couple pieces of content myself in the form of interviews, which you guys will see in some later videos. So now it's time to get into the equipment. What did I use? For the most part, it was everything that I have here in this studio because I actually like the equipment that I use a lot. I packed up everything in 2 Pelican cases and a backpack, and with the help of Pastor Lee, we were able to set up everything in about 45 minutes from start to finish inside of the pastor's office. And you heard that right. Inside of the pastor's office, we set up this podcast studio. So I'll first talk about lighting because lighting is essential to make any video look good. I like to be able to control the light if possible. And one of the things about this pastor's office is that he doesn't have windows, which is actually a good thing. Just the 2 doors on both sides of the room. But when those doors are shut, it is dark. And being able to have really good control of your lighting allows you to have that same constant look every single time. We don't have to deal with the sun going up and going down and changing how much light is coming through a window. So that was already a huge benefit. I used the GVM 3-point lighting system. It's the same GVM lights that I have here in the studio that I took with me. With the included tripods, we had 1 light on the left, 1 light on the right, and we used the 3rd light to actually bounce light off the ceiling to have a certain look. So using just a simple 3-light system gave us enough light that we needed. We didn't even have to turn up the lights to 100%. So that was even an added benefit because we still had some room to play with. And then for the back wall, I wanted to add a little color, a little dynamic to the video. The same way that I do here and having it blue today, I wanted to add some color for them. So I used some floodlights. We actually used 4 floodlights. They're really small, budget-friendly lights that we had in the back so that we can have a little bit more color on screen. I don't like a simple plain background because it's just simple and plain when adding a little bit of color just makes everything a little bit better. When it comes to the audio setup, you already know the microphones that I went with. If you're a true fan, put the name of the company in the comment section of the microphones that I use all the time. They're a huge supporter of this channel and they just make some legendary equipment. Of course, we went with Shure microphones. Specifically, we went with the brand new Shure SM7dB microphones and we attached them to the Shure boom arms that we had as well to have a nice podcast audio setup. These boom arms allow us to swivel it around so we were able to use these and position them how we wanted to get really good audio quality. Now attached to the microphones, obviously, we need some XLR cables. So I have some 50-foot XLR cables that we ran back to our audio interface, which we'll talk about. And we also had headphones as well. We used the Shure SRH440A headphones so that the pastors that were having the conversation would be able to hear each other nice and clearly. And I actually bought some extension adapters as well, 3.5 extension adapters to run back to our audio interface as well, because the table that we were using in the back of the room, well, really the middle of the room, had all of our equipment to produce the live stream. Now, in order to produce the live stream and listen to the audio, I was using a pair of the Ionic 40s myself from Shure, and this was allowing me to make sure that our audio just sounded good, clean the entire time of the podcast. Now, our microphones, our headphones were all connected to the Rodecaster Duo, the exact same device that I have here on my desk that I use every single day pretty much is what I took with me. And using the Rodecaster Duo is perfect for a smaller podcast setup because it has 2 XLR inputs and we had 2 speakers. So having both of those individuals plugged right into this small digital interface was great. Even plugging my headphones into the front headphone jack just made it easier for me to monitor audio, and having their headphones plugged into the back of the interface, they could listen to themselves during the podcast. Now that we've talked about lighting, we've talked about audio, it's time to talk about the video setup. The cameras that I used were the Sony FX30s, and these are the cameras that I'm using right now. The 2 cameras that I have here are the same 2 cameras that we use for this podcast studio. So the quality that comes out of these cameras are amazing. These are cinema line cameras. These are mirrorless cameras, and they worked perfect. And I said earlier that we were there for 4 hours to include setup and breakdown. These cameras never turned off. And the reason that they don't turn off is because I use dummy batteries. Having a dummy battery rather than a regular battery, traditional battery, allows me to keep these things powered for hours on end. So I never actually turned the cameras off. The only time I even took the SD card out of the camera is because I wanted to make sure that I had enough space to actually record internally as well for all the different episodes that we shot. But the actual cameras were never turned off. So the Sony FX30s are really great cameras, and I'm going to do a review on these cameras eventually. I want to do a video on PTZ cameras versus mirrorless cameras because I feel there's a lot of misconceptions about these newer mirrorless cameras, and if you understand the capabilities of them, it might even be an option for you in how you want to produce your content. Now, the way in which we position these cameras was based on the focal lengths of the lenses that I have. I have one FX30 camera that has a 30mm Sigma lens on it, and the other has a 16mm Sigma lens on it. Now, we won't go into lenses and distances, but essentially the 30mm is a closer shot. And so we use this one to specifically look at our host pastor. This camera was used as the solo tight shot for our host. He was able to look directly into this camera and address the audience and anything that just needed him in this shot only and not showing our guest. And for our wide angle shot, we used the other Sony FX30 with the Sigma 16mm lens because it's naturally a wider shot. So we were able to get both speakers into the same frame. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, I would love to do a 3 camera shot, one close up on the host, one close up on the guest, and one that is a wide shot. Now, I did take 3 camera bodies with me, but we just decided because of the space and just the more efficiency of getting it going that we could deal with the 2 camera setup to really show that proof of concept. And if you're looking to actually do this on a budget, that's one of the things that you consider is where can you eliminate equipment and where you can actually use the equipment that you have to still get the job done efficiently. Now, I did have a couple other cameras around the room that allows me to actually bring to you this video of the behind the scenes footage, and I was using the Osbot Tail Airs, and these cameras were just positioned so we could do the setup and actually get into the live streaming. Because I don't have a dedicated camera person to follow me around for these videos, the Osbot is the dedicated camera now. Now, if you remember from a previous video, I talked about replacing my church's A10 Mini and giving it to another ministry for a podcast setup. Well, this is that video and this is that podcast setup. So both of the FX30s were plugged into the A10 Mini, and the A10 Mini was then plugged into my computer. Along with the Rodecaster Duo that I mentioned earlier, that was also plugged in directly into my computer. So being able to have our full production on a simple 6-foot table was definitely an easy way to pull off a high quality podcast setup. Now the computer that I'm using is the MacBook Pro, and this is the newest model of the MacBook. It's the M3 processing. Now I'm going to link to all of the equipment that I'm talking about, but I'm also going to create you guys a budget idea list as well from Amazon. So if you like the equipment here, but you're trying to save some dollars, make sure that you check out both lists, not only my list of the equipment that I actually use, but also the budget-friendly option that's still going to give you really good quality. Now, the software that I'm using for recording the podcast is the best podcast software for Mac computer, and it's called Ecamm. If you have not signed up and taken a look at Ecamm and joined their community online, you are definitely missing out. Ecamm is a powerful software, and it is the go-to software anytime I'm recording on my MacBook Pro. Because not only is it great for live streaming, it's great for podcast recording as well. So not only was I recording in Ecamm, I was also recording on both cameras individually as well. I love having backups. You never know when you need to go and rely on that backup. Now, there was one piece of equipment that I wanted to use, but that I just didn't get a chance to. And this would have been perfect for that 3rd camera setup. And this was going to be a slider. YC Onion has sent me over one of their camera sliders, and I didn't get a chance to use it in this video, but I will show you guys what you can do with it in the next video. In the description below, I'm going to link to Agape Fellowship, Pastor Daryl Armstrong, and Pastor Lee so that you can check them out as well and see how they're leveraging the power of social media. As leaders in the ministry space, if you need that additional assistance to, nudge your ministry, there are going to be some good examples to follow to see how they're actually doing it. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.